Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Friday, 4th April, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States of America. President Donald Trump unveiled broad tariffs, including a 10% universal tariff on all imported foreign goods and reciprocal tariffs ranging from 10 to over 50% on nations he accuses of having cheated America. The IMF cautioned that these tariffs pose a significant threat to the global economy, pushing for a constructive resolution to trade tensions. The tariffs have elicited global reactions spanning anger, dismay, threats of retaliation, and bewilderment from U.S. allies and adversaries, with some countries contemplating retaliation by targeting American tech titans. These tariffs are causing market volatility and uncertainty for our soybean farmers and threaten to paralyze the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, impacting roughly 6.2 million people nationwide. The Trump administration is threatening to freeze $510 million in contracts and grants to Brown University and is targeting Columbia University over alleged anti-Semitism, raising concerns about academic freedom and free speech on college campuses. Princeton was among 60 universities that received a warning letter from the Education Department in March over accusations of anti-Semitism. A coalition of 19 Democratic attorneys general filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration over an executive order seeking to overhaul U.S. elections, challenging provisions including proof of citizenship, requirements for voter registration, and mail-in ballot rules. Attorneys general and governors from 23 states and the District of Columbia filed a lawsuit in federal court in Rhode Island arguing the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services lacks the authority to unilaterally claw back funding the states had already built health programs around. President Donald Trump fired several National Security Council, NSC, staffers after a meeting where far-right activist Laura Loomer presented opposition research, alleging their disloyalty to the president. The firings included 4 staffers dismissed overnight and 2 removed over the weekend. The Justice Department is seeking the death penalty in a case, the first time since President Donald Trump returned to office with a vow to resume federal executions. A judge has ordered the government to release a Venezuelan temporary protected status holder who was wrongfully detained in January. There is a, end quote, fair likelihood, end quote. The Trump administration violated a court order temporarily blocking the deportation of alleged Venezuelan gang members under a rarely invoked 18th century law. The intense campaign of airstrikes in Yemen, targeting the Houthi rebels over their attacks on shipping in Middle East waters stemming from the Israel-Hamas war, has killed at least 67 people, according to casualty figures released by the Houthis. The Pentagon has used $200 million worth of munitions in Operation Rough Rider against the Houthi militia in just 3 weeks. The U.S. is deploying additional aircraft carriers to West Asia amid escalating conflict with Yemen's Houthi rebels and Iran. The U.S. Senate rejected a bid to block $8.80 billion in arms sales to Israel over the human rights crisis facing Palestinians in Gaza. The U.S. is considering a deal to save TikTok. The Trump administration is in talks with conflict-plagued Congo on developing its mineral resources under a deal that the Congolese president has endorsed. China, Taiwan. The U.S. accused China of putting the region's security at risk after China launched military drills targeting Taiwan. The drills included a rehearsal blockade and simulated attacks. The China's People's Liberation Army, PLA, sent 76 aircraft and more than 20 Navy and Coast Guard ships to positions around Taiwan's main island. Talks between the U.S. and China's armed forces are a key indicator of the guardrails in place, even as the Trump administration and Beijing clash over a slew of issues. Russia. Kirill Dmitriev, the head of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, and President Vladimir Putin's special representative for investment and economic cooperation, met with Steve Witkoff in Saudi Arabia in February, marking the first time in years that a senior Russian official had traveled to the United States for talks with an American counterpart. Wang Yi is on a 3-day visit to Moscow for strategic cooperation talks, surrounded by uncertainty around the partial ceasefire in Ukraine and U.S. President Donald Trump striking a critical tone against the Russian and Ukrainian leaders. India. PwC reported that the evolving U.S. trade policies, including tariff realignments and other measures, require Indian businesses to develop a long-term resilience strategy. The Dutch foreign minister in Delhi for talks stated that India and the EU should compare notes on the U.S. tariff impact, warning that tariffs will bring inflationary pressure on the U.S. economy. The Netherlands will sign a semiconductor MoU with India soon. A U.S. court dismissed a claim that a complaint was served on an Indian official during a Washington visit, citing failed delivery attempts. NATO. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told NATO allies that Washington remained committed to the alliance, but expected them to spend far more on defense, aiming for member states to prioritize defense spending to enable the alliance to become stronger and more viable. Rubio was more conciliatory in tone with NATO allies, but the growing transatlantic chasm is hard to gloss over. Ukraine's future and European security are existential questions for the alliance. Global trade. Global reaction to the U.S. tariff war. The world is reacting to President Trump's announcement of new tariffs on nearly every country on the planet. The move is meant to reshape the global trading order, and some countries are being hit harder than others. NPR correspondents around the world are hearing anger, dismay, threats of retaliation, and bewilderment. Trump's new global tariffs have shocked both allies and adversaries alike. The Trump administration appears to be leaving no stone unturned with its sweeping tariffs around the globe, from rocky outcrops home to polar bears in the Arctic, to tiny tropical islands, to a former British penal colony. Global financial markets experienced significant volatility, with escalating trade war policies from the U.S. wiping $2.50 trillion off Wall Street and global share prices. Economists are concerned that tariffs ranging from 10% to 50% could significantly increase the risk of a worldwide economic downturn. The U.S.'s long-threatened tariffs have pushed the country into a global trade war. Trump is set to unleash Liberation Day tariffs, though the White House admits details are still being finalized. NHA World Senior Business Correspondent Isaki Daisuke analyzes the potential impact of Trump's Liberation Day tariffs on global trade. Trump's tariff gamble carries political risk. Experts warn that the surge of AI in research risks creating an illusion of objectivity and insight in scientific research. Trump's tariffs are a disaster for the world's poorest countries. Turning to the United States, the Pentagon's office that outfoxed the Soviets and predicted China's rise is in danger of being cut. Americans can learn how to save a democracy from opponents of authoritarianism elsewhere. America is retreating from the global health scene, creating a coming global health crisis. Jimmy Patronis, a Republican, won the race to replace Matt Gaetz in Florida's 1st congressional district. Wisconsin held an elections test for Trump voters. Marco Rubio is visiting NATO headquarters for a meeting of foreign ministers. The metals company's attempts to skirt ESO rules could lead to a free-for-all seabed mining scenario. In the United Kingdom, Dr. Amy Orban, commissioned by the UK government, suggests blanket bans on teen smartphone use are potentially detrimental. She leads a team of academics from UK universities in the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. Its review. A fire briefly disrupted train service to Heathrow Airport's Terminal 5 from Paddington Station in London. Betty Webb, one of the last surviving members of the Bletchley Park code-breaking team during World War II, died at 101. More than 230 people were infected with norovirus on the Queen Mary 2, traveling from England to the Caribbean. Regarding Ukraine and Russia, conquest is back, and a peace deal in Ukraine could further normalize what was once taboo. Meanwhile, Turkey has become a full-blown autocracy under Erdogan. In Panama, Latin American migrants turned away at the U.S. border are returning home, raising questions about Panama's preparedness for this reverse migration. Santorini, Greece, insists it's open for business after being shaken by thousands of small earthquakes. Tragically, in Myanmar, an earthquake killed more than 2,000 people and at least 18 in Thailand, mainly at a Bangkok office tower construction site. Focusing on Japan, a Hiroshima family pursues a peaceful, self-sufficient life on their farm, recycling food waste into animal feed and biodiesel from used cooking oil. Addressing bottlenecks in chip-making through public-private collaboration and information sharing is essential for Japan's economic security. Alpine pit crew members practice at the pits at the Suzuka Circuit in Suzuka, Mie Prefecture, ahead of Sunday's Japanese Formula One Grand Prix race. Across the Pacific region, assurances were provided to the Vanuatu government that funds paid to Airbus for the purchase of A220 aircraft will be returned. Auckland City FC is on track to defend the AFC Men's Champions League title. Bougainville, seeking independence from Papua New Guinea, continues to grapple with the trauma of its past. Rain and clouds did not dampen the spirits of Polyfest attendees on day 2. Bishop Rosario Menezes of the Lay Diocese believes the canonization of PNG's first saint will boost the faith of not only Catholics, but also Christians. Moana Pacifica is hungry for more after their win against the Crusaders. Polyfest 2025's opening day unveils 2 diversity stages for the first time. A formal meeting of journalists from Tonga and Papua New Guinea is expected to foster a collective media voice in the Pacific. Lastly, in Norway, Lise Klaveness discusses boycotting World Cups and playing Israel. Israeli military operations in the Gaza Strip have escalated, with airstrikes and ground incursions intensifying, particularly in Khan Yunis and Rafah. These strikes have resulted in numerous casualties, including women and children. Airstrikes on Gaza City, including one that struck the Dar al-Arqam school, used as a shelter, resulted in at least 27 deaths, including children, and wounded 100 others. Overall, Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 100 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip. The Israeli army is under investigation for the deaths at the school-turned-shelter. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that Israel is seizing territory and intends to divide up the Gaza Strip by establishing a new security corridor, asserting that the Israeli army is seizing territory, hitting the terrorists, and destroying the infrastructure. Defense Minister Israel Katz announced a major expansion of attacks on Gaza and the capture of large areas that will be added to the security zones of the State of Israel. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in the Rafah area are fleeing, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. An incident on March 23rd in Hashashan, Rafah, involved Israeli forces firing upon a Red Crescent ambulance en route to collect people injured by an airstrike, resulting in the deaths of 2 paramedics. The bodies of the rescue team were later recovered from a mass grave a week later. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society said that nearly all of the 15 bodies recovered had gunshot wounds. Turning to Syria, state media reported that at least 9 people in southwestern Syria were killed in Israeli strikes. An airbase in Hama, Syria, was targeted by an Israeli airstrike, nearly destroying the facility. The UN envoy for Syria has criticized repeated military attacks by Israel in Syria, warning of violations of international law. Syria has accused Israel of trying to destabilize the country. Domestically, In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dismissed the Qatargate case as a political manhunt. Police questioned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu amid claims that members of his team worked simultaneously for the state of Qatar. He is not a suspect, but 2 of his media advisors have been arrested. Netanyahu reversed his decision to appoint a Navy commander as security chief after criticism, including from a U.S. senator. In the West Bank, a teenager who was held in an Israeli prison for 6 months without being charged died after collapsing in unclear circumstances. Finally, in a lighter note from Israel, while on a hike with her family, Ziv Nitzan, 3, stumbled across a 3,800-year-old Egyptian amulet, which will go on display in an upcoming exhibition. India faces accusations of discrimination against Tata Consultancy Services, TCS, in the UK, where the company is alleged to have unfairly targeted older, non-Indian nationals in a redundancy program. The British Sikh activist Jagtar Singh Johal remains in solitary confinement in an Indian jail even after being acquitted of terrorism charges, with his brother claiming he is being mentally tortured through unwarranted detention. To combat cervical cancer, India is training doctors to promote the HPV vaccine and counter disinformation. India's army has accused Pakistan of firing across the line of control. Rising concerns surround betting app addiction and financial exploitation. A bill amending laws governing Muslim land endowments has passed, drawing criticism for potentially weakening minority rights. India signed agreements on April 1, 2025, for development in education, health, and cultural sectors. Turning to the United States, President Trump is implementing a universal 10% tariff on all imports, effective April 5, with an additional 16% due on April 10th, sparking global market concerns. He announced reciprocal tariffs, citing India's 52% tariffs and currency manipulation, leading to a discounted reciprocal tariff of 26% on Indian goods. The White House cites duplicative testing and certification requirements as obstacles for American companies in India. As Indian Prime Minister Modi prepares to visit Sri Lanka from April 4 to 6, 2025, Sri Lanka's Foreign Minister, Vijitha Herath, has discussed key agreements and the change in India's engagement. An economist suggests that the proposed free trade agreement, FTA, could cover services and worker mobility, while ensuring that closer ties between the neighbors do not upset other powers like China and the U.S. In South America, Chile's Codelco has signed a deal with Hindustan Copper Ltd., potentially reducing its dependence on the Chinese market, and India and Chile have agreed to deepen cooperation on Antarctica exploration. Myanmar is reeling from a 7.7 magnitude earthquake that struck on March 28, 2025. The disaster has killed at least 3,085 people, injured 4,715, and left 341 missing, with numbers expected to climb. The country has been in civil war since 2021, exacerbating the situation. The healthcare system is overwhelmed, and damaged infrastructure is hindering rescue efforts. International aid has arrived from China and Russia, but some criticize the current administration's response. Rescue teams from Myanmar and Turkey are collaborating to save survivors. Ceasefires have been announced by warring groups until April 22. Earthsat satellite imagery shows extensive damage in Mandalay and Sagaing. Misinformation spreads via social media. The head of Myanmar's military government made a rare international trip to Thailand. Thailand hosted the head of Myanmar's military government for a regional summit. The visit occurs as Myanmar grapples with the aftermath of the recent earthquake. Japan is grappling with depopulation, posing a national security risk by impacting military readiness. To counter this, Japan is promoting tourism in cities like Yokohama and Koyasan alongside Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. Niche proxy businesses are also thriving, assisting with significant life decisions. A centuries-old Japanese folding screen in an Austrian palace is strengthening ties between the two nations, with a replica planned for the Osaka Expo. Ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix featuring drivers like Lewis Hamilton and Yuki Tsunoda, Japan's government will deploy infrastructure experts to Thailand following a building collapse caused by an earthquake. Dalton Investments, a significant Fuji Media shareholder, is pushing for executive resignations due to a scandal. Adding to legal issues, the family of a detained person, represented by attorney Shuichi Ibusuki, claims the government is withholding vital information. Turning to the United States, former President Donald Trump has announced new tariffs impacting several major trading partners. Japan will face a reciprocal tariff of 24%. Additional tariffs include 34% on China, 26% on India, and 20% on the European Union. A minimum baseline levy of 10% will be implemented on imports from all countries starting April 5, with reciprocal tariffs for countries with large trade imbalances taking effect on April 9. The tariffs, particularly on car imports, could slow Japan's annual economic growth by up to 2%, with the duty rate considered the worst among the scenarios that had been imagined by the market. Meanwhile, Cambodia's government maintains its commitment to freedom of expression, but emphasizes the enforcement of laws against those who distort facts, make false accusations, and incite social unrest. The Cambodian embassy addressed the case of Hay Phana, a Cambodian activist in Japan who apologized to Cambodian leaders after his brother's arrest. The embassy stated that Hay Phana's decision to join the Cambodian People's Party was his own, without pressure related to his brother's situation. This highlights concerns that the Cambodian government's crackdown on critics extends to the Cambodian diaspora in Japan. South Korea's Constitutional Court unanimously impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol, removing him from office due to his declaration of martial law in December. All 8 justices cited violations of his duties and Parliament's rights, as well as a betrayal of public trust. This decision, reached after months of political unrest, mandates a national election within 60 days. Lee Jae-myung is currently favored as a potential successor. The ruling has intensified the existing divide between conservative and progressive voters, and may significantly impact relations with neighboring Japan. In Seoul, over 14,000 police officers were deployed near the Constitutional Court to manage anticipated protests. The court specifically stated that President Yoon violated basic rights through his declaration of martial law. Workplace safety is also an area of concern, with the government and safety advocates pushing for further improvements. The death of South Korean actress Kim Sae-ron has prompted her former boyfriend, actor Kim So-hyun, to address the controversy surrounding their past relationship in a tearful news conference. China is strategically balancing international trade and economic growth amidst global uncertainties. Beijing seeks advantageous trade agreements while addressing potential risks from international instability. China's economic influence is reflected in Biden's expansion into emerging markets such as Brazil, with a significant factory investment of nearly $1 billion. This move aims to sustain Biden's global growth and offset U.S. tariffs. However, the company is facing several challenges. China's military exercises near Taiwan have intensified regional tensions, underscoring its sovereignty claims. Further military drills simulated an encirclement of Taiwan, sending a strong message to separatist movements. Despite past border conflicts, China and India are focusing on enhanced trade cooperation and mutual economic benefits. President Xi Jinping emphasized the shared heritage and developmental goals of both nations. The Communist Party of China, CPC, and the Communist Party of India, Marxist, CPI, have continued friendly exchanges, bolstering mutual understanding and practical cooperation. China has also detained 3 Philippine nationals under suspicion of espionage activities. Taiwan faces heightened tensions as China conducts live-fire military exercises near its territory, reinforcing China's claims of sovereignty. China has also conducted drills simulating the surrounding of Taiwan as a warning to separatists. Barges that can be linked to form a bridge could provide China with a way to land large numbers of vehicles and troops on Taiwan. The United States is imposing new tariffs on China, with Mr. Trump unveiling tariffs of 34% on Chinese goods. These tariffs aim to rectify trade imbalances, prompting China to promise retaliatory actions. The US and China are experiencing increased tensions due to China's military exercises near Taiwan. In the Philippines, military modernization plans are underway, but National Security Council spokesperson Jonathan Malaya assured that these acquisitions pose no threat to any nation. Meanwhile, China has detained 3 Philippine nationals on espionage allegations. Myanmar experienced a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake, which caused a 30-story skyscraper in Bangkok, Thailand, to collapse. The European Union is bracing for potential tariff increases from the United States, with EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen asserting that the EU is equipped with a strong plan for retaliatory measures, but emphasizing that a negotiated resolution remains the preferred course to avert a trade war. Von der Leyen expressed that Europeans feel disappointed by the US due to the tariffs, adding that they would negatively impact people worldwide and create uncertainty. In other developments, the EU is scheduled to host its inaugural summit, with Central Asian leaders representing Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, with human rights issues positioned as a key priority. European Council President Antonio Costa and European Commission head Ursula von der Leyen are slated to attend the summit. The EU has also committed billions to Central Asia to diversify supply chains, lessen reliance on China, extend competitive agreements, develop local industries, and foster sustainable mining practices. Moreover, the European Commission and the British government have jointly penalised 15 prominent car manufacturers, nearly €600 million for participation in a car recycling cartel involved in fixing car recycling costs and processes. Mercedes-Benz disclosed the cartel's existence. In Serbia, university students are embarking on a 1,300-kilometer cycling journey to Strasbourg to solicit EU assistance, alleging that their struggle for justice and adherence to the rule of law is being disregarded. United States of America, USA. The United States, with the potential introduction of broad tariffs by Donald Trump, has spurred the EU to formulate a strong plan for counteraction, even though the EU would rather reach a negotiated settlement to sidestep a trade war. A proposal has also surfaced suggesting that the US should counter Europe's VAT with its own VAT as a way to leverage misconceptions about tariffs and trade to America's benefit. The UK is also preparing for tariffs after failing to secure an exemption. United Kingdom girls are reporting a decline in their sense of safety at school and increased disaffection with their education compared to pre-pandemic levels. A study analyzing international data revealed a notable decrease in girls' emotional engagement, especially among those in the 13-14 age bracket. More than 1 million cars sold annually in the UK are too large for standard parking spaces. This situation has spurred a campaign network to urge government intervention to encourage the use of smaller vehicles and to implement increased fees for SUV owners, tackling the issue of cars growing beyond the dimensions of urban parking spots. London St Pancras High Speed, LSPF, is reducing fees for operators intending to establish new routes. This move aims to lower the operational expenses associated with cross-channel train services, ultimately promoting the expansion of international rail travel from the UKT. New UK entry permit regulations led to minimal disruptions at Paris's Gare du Nord station, as passengers began their Eurostar trips to London. Approximately 100 authors staged a protest outside Meta's London headquarters, accusing the US technology company of stealing content to train its artificial intelligence models. In international relations, despite Prime Minister Keir, PETA is actively campaigning against Gales Bakery for implementing a surcharge on plant-based milk options. The organization contends that this policy unfairly discriminates against customers with dairy sensitivities or those who opt for plant-based alternatives for ethical reasons. Gales currently charges an additional 40p to 60p for oat or soya milk in coffee or tea. Australia's political landscape sees parties strategically using the Chinese lifestyle app Xiaohongshu or Red Note to engage with Chinese communities ahead of the 2025 election. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and opposition leader Peter Dutton are focusing on Western Sydney. Abby Chatfield criticised the media frenzy and the Liberals following her clearance by the Australian Electoral Commission, AICS, regarding her social media posts. The Australian economy is bracing for potential challenges from Trump's proposed tariffs, which could cost the nation an estimated $27 billion. The announcement has already affected the Australian stock market, with the S&P ASX 200 dropping nearly 3%. These tariffs have led to disrupted economic models and revised interest rate predictions due to concerns about their impact on Australian households. Australia's superannuation funds have faced cyber attacks, resulting in data breaches for some members. The Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, ASFA, confirmed that while many attempts were unsuccessful, some firms did experience data compromise. Queensland is set to introduce a policy allowing police officers to issue immediate year-long domestic violence protection orders. However, experts worry that this could lead to the misidentification of vulnerable women as perpetrators. Police Minister Dan Purdy maintains that the plan will save police hundreds of thousands of hours. Rory Amon, a former NSW Liberal MP, will face trial in February 2026 on sexual offense charges involving a teenage boy. Amon has pleaded not guilty to 10 charges, including 5 counts of sexual intercourse with a person over 10 and under 14. Hungary, under Prime Minister Viktor Orban, has announced its withdrawal from the International Criminal Court, ICC, a decision that coincided with the official 4-day visit of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is Netanyahu's first European visit since the ICC issued an arrest warrant for him regarding alleged war crimes in Gaza. Orban described the ICC as having diminished into a political forum and asserted that the ruling would have no effect in Hungary. He also rejected the notion of arresting Netanyahu, deeming the warrant brazen. Netanyahu, despite the arrest warrant, received red carpet treatment in Budapest and commended Hungary's decision to leave the ICC. Hungary states it will end its ICC membership, a move coinciding with Netanyahu's visit. The ICC has limited options to respond to this defiance. Canada, under the leadership of its Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is implementing retaliatory measures against the United States in response to tariffs imposed on Canadian steel, aluminum, and vehicles. These U.S. tariffs, set at 25%, are considered unjustified by the Canadian government. Canada's countermeasure involves imposing a 25% tariff on U.S. vehicles imported into Canada that do not meet the requirements of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. This affects approximately 10% of vehicles shipped from the U.S. to Canada, totaling roughly 67,000 vehicles annually, specifically impacting cars and light trucks made with less than 75% North American parts. Business leaders in Canada have described the nation's earlier exemption from broader global tariffs imposed by then-President Donald Trump as a narrow escape, noting that key industries like steel, aluminum, and automobiles are still affected. Separately, in legal proceedings related to the 2022 Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa, 2 top organizers were found guilty of mischief. These convictions stem from the weeks-long protest that paralyzed the city due to anger over pandemic mandates, with this case being among the last to be adjudicated from the 2022 trucker protests. The United States, under then-President Donald Trump, imposed tariffs on steel, aluminum, and vehicles imported from Canada, setting the levies at 25%. These tariffs triggered international reactions, including retaliatory measures from Canada. Turning to Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese stated that the decision by then U.S. President Donald Trump to impose tariffs was not the act of a friend, but ruled out placing reciprocal tariffs against the United States. France's President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister François Bayrou have vocally condemned tariffs imposed by Donald Trump, describing them as brutal and unfounded, and a catastrophe for the global economy. Macron hinted at a possible suspension of French investment in the U.S. until the situation clarifies, and called for continued negotiations. The political scene in France is currently witnessing controversy around Marine Le Pen. Jordan Bardella, president of the National Rally, claimed that Le Pen's fraud conviction was politically driven, aiming to undermine their far-right party. These claims were rejected by a leading prosecutor. Protests led by Bardella have erupted in response to Le Pen's ban from office, highlighting existing political divides. A debate is ongoing regarding religious freedom and sporting rules, particularly the proposed ban on Muslim headscarves in sports. This has sparked criticism from athletes and triggered broader discussions on religious expression, with French Muslim weightlifter Sylvie Eberena being a part of these discussions. Russia's foreign policy involves complex relations with the United States. A Russian official visited Washington to discuss sanctions relief and improved ties. Russia offered to mediate between the U.S. and Iran, warning against military action. Despite tensions, Putin is reportedly open to discussing a potential deal on Ukraine with Trump. However, Russia rejected a U.S. ceasefire proposal for Ukraine. Domestically, Russia banned the Elton John AIDS Foundation, citing moral concerns. Intense battles are reported in Russia's Kursk region between Russian and Ukrainian forces. The United States has imposed tariffs, some exceeding 40%, on developing nations in Southeast Asia, including Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos. This action has prompted widespread economic concerns. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, led by Kristalina Georgieva, warns these tariffs pose a significant risk to the global economy. The IMF fears a potential global trade war. Asian markets reacted negatively, with Tokyo's Nikkei 225 index initially falling by over 3.4%. It settled at a 2.9% decrease. Export-oriented economies in Asia, such as China, Japan, and Vietnam, are expected to be significantly affected. Factory workers, directors, trade associations, and analysts across Asia are concerned about potential job losses. These losses could negatively impact key exporting sectors. A legal challenge initiated by the New Civil Liberties Alliance led by Andrew Morris seeks to block the tariffs on Chinese imports. The suit alleges that the president exceeded his authority. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen recently visited Greenland alongside Greenland's new Prime Minister, Jens Frederik Nielsen, and the outgoing Prime Minister, Mutbi Igade. The visit occurred amid renewed U.S. interest in acquiring the Arctic territory. Figures like Donald Trump and U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance have fueled this interest, with Vance accusing Denmark of underinvesting in Greenland. Frederiksen addressed these diplomatic sensitivities directly, stating that Denmark would not cede Greenland to the United States, firmly asserting, "You cannot annex another country." She further advocated for enhanced Arctic defense collaboration between Denmark and the United States. Greece is embarking on a €25 billion, $27 billion, defense modernization program focusing on advanced technology like AI-powered missile systems and drones. This investment follows a period of economic recovery and reinforces Greece's defense spending, which is already at 3% of its GDP. The Aegean Islands in Greece are also grappling with severe weather, including flash floods and heavy rainfall, prompting a state of emergency. Mayor of Paros, Kostas Bizas, described the situation as a total catastrophe and is seeking aid. Meanwhile, Greek coast guards are collaborating in search and rescue operations following the sinking of refugee boats near Greece and Turkey, where at least 16 people have died. Turning to Turkey, its coast guards are also involved in the search and rescue efforts after refugee boats sank off the coasts of both Turkey and Greece. Combined incidents have resulted in at least 16 deaths, and the search continues for 2 missing individuals. Thailand is responding to a tower collapse in Bangkok, focusing on rescuing trapped workers and inspecting affected structures. Bangkok also recently hosted Myanmar's military chief, Min Aung Hlaing, who requested assistance following a devastating earthquake in Myanmar. Moreover, Bangkok was the venue for the BIMSTEC summit, where India's Prime Minister Modi met with his Thai counterpart and other regional leaders, including Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, Bangladesh's Chief Advisor Mohammed Yunus, and Myanmar's Min Aung Hlaing. Myanmar is facing a severe crisis following an earthquake that has caused at least 3,000 fatalities. In response to this disaster, the country's military chief, Min Aung Hlaing, traveled to Bangkok, Thailand, to seek aid. His visit took place despite the widespread international condemnation of his government. He subsequently participated in the BIMSTEC summit, also held in Bangkok. Turkey has seen Meta fined for refusing to suspend accounts linked to protests. Distrust is hindering peace prospects in Kurdish areas due to crackdowns and unclear reforms after potential PKK disbandment. President Erdogan is seeking support for a new constitution amid these tensions. Turkish state media also reported the detention of 11 people for backing a boycott, protesting the arrest of Istanbul's opposition mayor. Afghanistan is facing a healthcare crisis as over 200 who supported health facilities have shut down due to aid cuts, affecting nearly 2 million people. The closures stem from the previous U.S. administration's freeze on foreign assistance, leading to significant disruptions in essential health services. Meanwhile, Pakistan is proceeding with its plan to deport approximately 3 million Afghan nationals this year. The country has already seen around 845,000 Afghans leave in the last year and a half. Pakistani officials believe about 3 million Afghans are still within its borders, with a significant portion lacking legal documentation. Haiti is facing a dire situation as gang violence intensifies, triggering widespread protests and social unrest. Armed gangs reportedly control about 85% of Port-au-Prince. Thousands of Haitians have clashed with police, demanding government protection from the escalating violence. The leader of the Transitional Presidential Council admitted that Haiti has become hell for everyone and announced new measures to combat the gangs. Meanwhile, in Miami, the Haitian community is seeking legal action to postpone the return of community members to Haiti, given the ongoing violence. New Zealand is grappling with a significant error, as an 11-year-old girl was wrongly sent to a psychiatric ward and medicated. This incident occurred due to a misidentification by the police, who believed she was a missing woman, leading to public outrage and investigations from both health officials and the police. Separately, the Navy ship Manawanui ran aground on a Samoan reef. Investigations revealed that the ship's crew, including the commanding officer, were undertrained, and the ship itself was not suited for the assigned task. In other news, a Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade spokesperson confirmed that New Zealand will sustain its existing level of aid to Kiribati. Prince Harry voiced his satisfaction after the Charity Commission concluded its inquiry into Centerbail, the organization he helped establish. The investigation addressed apprehensions surrounding the charity's chair and trustees, leading to a period of internal discord within the board. Lesotho, a small, landlocked kingdom in Africa facing significant economic challenges, has suffered a major setback due to tariffs. A 50% tariff, reportedly the highest imposed on any nation, has severely impacted Lesotho's already fragile economy. Bolivia witnessed deadly clashes between rival gold mining collectives. The dispute centered on territorial control of gold deposits in the northwestern region. At least 6 miners were killed, allegedly through the use of dynamite. Adding an unusual twist involving Bolivia, emissaries purporting to represent the United States of Kailasa engaged in real estate activities there. These same representatives, claiming affiliation with the fugitive Swami Nithyananda's purported nation, were later deported from another location after attempting to secure 1,000-year agreements with indigenous communities. The United States of Kailasa is widely regarded as a fictitious entity. The United Kingdom is set to transfer control of the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius. Former U.S. President Donald Trump's administration approved this move. However, the UK will retain control of the joint US-UK military base on Diego Garcia. This control will be maintained under a 99-year lease agreement. The agreement signifies that the U.S. needs to take no further action. Fiji is grappling with unexpected economic headwinds after being subjected to the highest U.S. tariffs in the Pacific, a move the Fijian Prime Minister admitted took the government by surprise. The administration is preparing to manage the impact. Meanwhile, Fijian rugby is in focus as teams gear up for the Singapore Sevens this weekend. In domestic rugby news, the Fijian Drua will be strengthened by the return of key players for their Round 8 match against the Crusaders in Suva this Saturday. Argentina's Libertarian President Javier Milei marked the anniversary of the Falkland Islands invasion with a statement expressing hope that islanders might one day choose Argentine nationality. Shifting focus in the United States, experts believe President Milei, a known admirer of Donald Trump, could be a valuable ally in addressing cultural issues, despite uncertainty surrounding his economic and geopolitical strategies. Brazil's Supreme Court has decided that Jair Bolsonaro, the former president, will face trial. He is accused of trying to subvert his loss in the 2022 election and inciting a coup. In other news, Brazil's foreign ministry revealed that the Bolsonaro administration spied on Paraguay. This revelation prompted Paraguay to recall its ambassador stationed in Brazil. Tanzania is facing scrutiny as the World Bank initiates a multi-million-dollar program to investigate alleged human rights abuses against herders near Ruaha National Park. The allegations include violent evictions, sexual assaults, killings, forced disappearances, and cattle seizures. These acts were allegedly carried out by rangers from the Tanzanian National Park Authority, TANAPA. The alleged abuses occurred during the implementation of a World Bank-financed tourism project. United States foreign policy regarding Africa presents a mixed outlook. While the $4 billion Lobito Corridor Railway project in Angola, a key initiative of the Biden administration, may continue to receive support under a potential Trump administration due to its strategic importance in mineral access, other aspects of the relationship face uncertainty. Specifically, experts suggest that Trump's existing tariffs have already undermined the preferential trade benefits previously afforded to African nations under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. Germany anticipates significant economic repercussions from the recent U.S. tariffs, with Finance Minister Jörg Kukies planning partnership-based negotiations with Washington. Simultaneously, Interior Minister Nancy Faeser lauded the effectiveness of the outgoing coalition's migration policy, emphasizing the increase in deportations and decrease in asylum applications. Sri Lanka faces ongoing challenges in integrating former female fighters into society nearly 16 years after its civil war ended. These women in the northern provinces struggle with limited opportunities. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is facing increasing pressure to address the housing crisis. Skyrocketing rents and home prices are impacting affordability for many Canadians. The government is exploring various policy options to increase housing supply and reduce costs. In the latest from Nigeria, the government is grappling with rising inflation and food insecurity. Efforts are underway to boost agricultural production and stabilize the economy. The Central Bank of Nigeria is implementing measures to control inflation. Meanwhile, France is preparing for upcoming elections amid growing political polarization. President Emmanuel Macron's party faces challenges from both the right and the left. Key issues include immigration, the economy, and social welfare. Ethiopia finds Meta embroiled in a substantial £1 80 billion lawsuit. This legal action claims Facebook fueled violence within the country through its platform. The suit was filed in the Kenyan High Court. Plaintiffs are demanding alterations to Facebook's algorithms. They also seek more content moderation across Africa. A $2.40 billion restitution fund is proposed for victims of platform-incited hate and violence. Trinidad and Tobago's legal landscape is once again under scrutiny as the Privy Council in London prepares to rule on the nation's homophobic laws. Despite their initial repeal in 2018, a recent decision by Trinidad's Supreme Court recriminalized consensual anal sex. Consequently, the UK Foreign Office has updated its travel advice to reflect the potential risks for LGBTQ travelers visiting the islands. Lithuania experienced a tragic event as 4 U.S. soldiers lost their lives during a military training exercise. The incident occurred when their vehicle became submerged in a swampy region during maneuvers. Intensive recovery operations were promptly launched, resulting in the retrieval of all 4 soldiers' remains. Pakistan is currently facing challenges as President Asif Ali Zardari was recently hospitalized in Karachi following a decline in his health, necessitating medical evaluations and continuous observation. Compounding these concerns, militant attacks throughout the nation led to 335 deaths in March, marking the deadliest month in almost 10 years and representing the highest death toll since August 2015. Slovakia is grappling with a state of emergency as the government advocates for culling hundreds of bears following a fatal mauling, with Prime Minister Robert Fico emphasizing the need for citizen safety in forests. Turning to Uganda and Tanzania, individuals displaced by the East African crude oil pipeline ECOL project in Uganda are reporting inadequate rehousing and compensation as the pipeline prepares to transport oil to the port of Tanga in Tanzania. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, death sentences for 3 Americans, Benjamin Zalman Pollen, Marcel Malanga, and Tyler Thompson, involved in a failed coup attempt, have been commuted to life imprisonment ahead of an anticipated visit from a Trump administration official. Zimbabwe is asserting that its land reform program is not a threat, but a demand for justice, rejecting reverse reparations and urging the global community to recognize it as such, while the situation in South Africa is described as a looming danger. Israel is facing a new scandal involving Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's close advisors, who are suspected of accepting money from Qatar to promote a positive image of the Gulf Arab state within Israel. In Saudi Arabia, the desert landscape of Al-Ula, known for its sandstone and granite formations, is undergoing a transformation with hotel construction and public art projects. Poland's prime minister has reported that his centrist political party was the target of a cyber attack, raising concerns about potential Russian interference ahead of Poland's presidential election. Meanwhile, in the United States, lawyers for Venezuelan migrants have petitioned the Supreme Court to block deportations under President Trump's plan, arguing that it exceeds wartime authority. Bulgaria's government has successfully weathered a parliamentary vote of no confidence initiated by a pro-Russia political party, which cited failures in the nation's foreign policy. Senegal's parliament has approved revisions to a law passed under the previous president, which granted amnesty for offenses committed during deadly opposition protests. Vietnam is preparing to host leaders from China and the EU amid the looming threat of new U.S. tariffs, as these countries, including Vietnam, exhibit significant trade surpluses with the United States. Liechtenstein's public radio station is ceasing operations after voters chose to discontinue state funding, and privatization efforts proved unsuccessful. Iceland has evacuated the Blue Lagoon due to a volcano eruption near the capital, with lava flows prompting warnings from the meteorological office. Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines expressed dwindling hope for peace amid the ongoing Russian advance, despite ceasefire negotiations led by the United States. The Philippines expresses optimism about its economic position, as Trump's tariffs are affecting its peers more severely. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.